It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. Columbia, this is Houston, AOS, over.
And we're back. Welcome back to the TKW podcast. That's the Knicks Wall podcast for first-time listeners. Today, on this special day, I'm joined by my usual co-hosts, Kyle Maggio, Sean Geddes. But we have a I don't even think special encapsulates this guest.
Does not.
No. I'm just going to go straight with icon, NBA champion, Hall of Famer, a true legend, Earl the Pro Monroe. Earl, thank you so much for coming.
Hey, it's great to be with you guys, man. You know, this is my lifelong ambition to try to get on here with you guys.
Well, you start us off with that. I mean, safe to say you already secured top guest in TKW podcast history. But let's talk about how we connected in the first place. Knicks Twitter was beyond excited to see you join. And I just wanted to see how do you liking Twitter so far? Because I know it's a different world, but how you liking it?
Well, you know, like you said, it is a different world. You know, it's interesting because I hear a lot of things that, you know, people say. People send me Twitter quotes and things of that nature. So, you know, I've been interested in trying to deal with it and so forth and so on. And but you know, I was sitting down with my daughter one night and we were talking Knicks and talking basketball. She used to play herself. So I agreed with some of the stuff that I had heard, but, you know, some of the stuff I didn't agree with. So she said, well, why don't you give yourself a voice on that? And I said, well, I'll think about it. And so the next night I said, you know what? Let's do it. And so here I am. It's been interesting. You know, it's new, but, you know, I'm quite sure I'll get the hang of it and know how to go about doing it.
No, it's a fun time to be on Twitter, especially this year, because thankfully you missed the angrier parts of Knicks Twitter. Right now, it's probably the happiest it's ever been. So I just want to see, how much have you enjoyed watching this year's team?
Well, I've actually, you know, really enjoyed watching the team. I mean, when you think in terms of how, you know, the team has done from the beginning of the year, it's been you know, like a metamorphosis, you know. They've certainly have grown. I enjoy seeing them, and you know, the growth factor in players is something that's really spectacular, you know, to look at, especially when, you know, we've from what we've seen in the past, and to see this Knicks team, you know, grow with their confidence, and not only, you know, in each other, you know, but, you know, as far as the team is concerned, you could look at them and see how they play, and, you know, they look like they enjoy playing with each other.
They definitely have enjoyed playing with each other, and that goes to the whole Big 15 thing, and it's been amazing to see all season. And I mean, you know, it's almost like picking favorites, unfortunately, but who have you enjoyed watching most this season? Like, as a former player and seeing all these players have big years, and, you know, these are some of the biggest years of these guys' careers.
Yeah. Well, obviously, Julius Randle has been, you know, great to watch. You know, his maturation as a player has been really nothing short of spectacular. I mean, when you think of, you know, what we saw last year, we saw a good player, but we didn't see the type of player that we're seeing you know, this year. And I think that maturation is the basis for him being so confident and comfortable within himself, and subsequently, you know, becoming the real leader of this team. You know, they're, you know, as well as they're different heroes every night, and, you know, the different stories every night. I think in terms of Noel, and the job he's done since Mitchell Robinson has been gone and sidelined RJ Barrett. And, he's certainly improved on his rookie year. And I guess with a little more consistency and whatnot, he's definitely a player to be reckoned with. Reggie Bullock, starting to come up big. Alex Burks, he was carrying the team for a while. Now he's starting to come back. The job he's done. And, and also let's not think, people will keep talking, we need a point guard and so forth. But, I think, when you think of Peyton, he's done a pretty good job all year long, especially now that he's gotten pushed, by Quickly. So, that's a good thing to look at. And, not to even mention Derrick Rose and, what he's done and Taj Gibson, that veteran leadership and coming off the bench. And, it's put this whole team together. We got a great bunch of older players and younger players. And that's a good mix.
Yeah, I actually wanted to get your take on RJ Barrett, kind of maybe before the draft, real quick, because, to this year, because all three of us were all in on RJ pretty instantaneously. Like, obviously in the draft, we wanted Zion. We know the crown jewel. We know how the drafts go every year. But all of us watched every Duke game because of Zion and therefore RJ. And we all were pretty high on his all-around game. And, things were a little bit clunky last season, maybe, but we believe that this kind of player that he's shown this year had existed. But I now feel we maybe have downplayed how good he can be, because he took a pretty considerable leap with his shooting and sort of everything else. But where did you stand maybe when we first got him towards now, or has that changed for you much?
I don't think it's really changed that much. Obviously, everybody was looking, specifically at Zion. But I thought he was a good alternative. I always say when after the draft, I said, well, Zion got to be the number one draft pick, but RJ got to be where he wanted to be. And that was here with the Knicks. And that's kind of how I felt about that whole scenario. He's, like you said, he's done a great job. From his rookie year to now, his shooting has gotten so much. I can't say enough about confidence in terms of players and whatnot. And when you see guys that go out and they play well, it has to be a confidence booster. And when you see guys playing well and other guys see guys playing well, it's infectious and it goes throughout the team. And that's what's going to happen. Everybody here is kind of, playing off of each other and feeling good for each other. And that's the kind of scenario you want, when you have a young team.
Yeah, and I think the person at the middle of that, just to shift gears a little bit, is Julius Randle. And this might be a hot take, but I think few people are better to answer it than you. Julius is known for his hard work, and he's kind of become the captain of this team. And I didn't get to watch your team, obviously, but just reading about and watching Willis Reed in terms of what he meant to that group of guys where everyone kind of gravitated towards him and kind of took on that hard work mentality. Do you see any similarities between Julius and Willis, or am I just too drunk on Julius this year?
Well, I think that, there is that similarity between, those guys in terms of their work ethic and what they do on the court, how other teammates gravitate to them in terms, but, it's specifically, I guess their leadership roles, are similar. Also the fact they're both left-handed, that's also similar, but oddly enough, with things, Willis did it, and what he did and all the accolades he received, people don't even realize he only played 10 years here in New York. You think about those times and whatnot, you think it was forever, but he did what he did when he did it. And sometimes, like you said, you didn't see those teams or whatnot, but when I do things like this, I like to throw those names back out because their names are, synonymous, especially here in New York, with the Knicks. I mean, those for New Yorkers and the Knicks, those were very transformative years. And that's the reason why those Knicks are loved today, because they were so transformative. You had the Dave the Bushers. I'm gonna throw out all these names that if I could think of it. You got Dick Barnett, of course, Willis, Bill Bradley, Phil Jackson, Dave Stallworth, Cassie Russell. Wow, who else? Mike Reardon. And then, of course, in my years that I came in and we won, there was Dean Memminger, Jerry Lucas, Henry Bibby, and not to even mention Hawthorne Wingo. So, these are names that, kind of live in Knick lore, so to speak. And, I think it's important that, we realize that when we compare from back then to today, that, there is a difference. But at the same time, I think that Julius has a chance to be that transformative player that the Knicks have been looking for since maybe Patrick Ewing. And, Willis was the heart and soul of the team from the moment he got here. And, I think although Julius has done it so great this year, it's only been this year. So we have to give him more time to, really establish what he's done. But, from my vantage point, he's done an excellent job, and bringing guys together, that's the most important thing, and he's done that. When you have success, it's important that success be spread. And he understands that. His passing has gotten to be, pinpoint and so forth and so on. His rebounding and so, yes, you have that Willis Reed factor, but they play different roles, so to speak. Willis was an inside guy. He hit the short jumpers and whatnot. He rebounded, was tenacious. He was a bully on defense, as a matter of fact. But when you come back to Julius Randle, he's a point forward that plays big as well. So the 3-pointers, and he's stepping into 3-pointers like he's been shooting them all his life at this point. So I'm excited. I mean, this, I guess you can hear it in my voice, but I'm excited about this team. I'm excited about the possibilities of what this team could be later on.
Now, you mentioned transformative a couple times there. I thought that was a good word, because I feel like this is what you would hope this first season becomes, a stepping stone towards something transformative after the last couple decades here, as we know, haven't gone, aside from like the Melo era briefly, it's been a rough ride, right? So do you think Tom Thibodeau has sort of established that first step very clearly? Because it's a drastic difference, and it does take a transformative kind of presence to come in, not just from Julius coming in and doing the work, but across the board. You need someone to help set the tone up top so that the players can, kind of fall in line to some degree. But do you, feel that he's either A, the man for the job in the long run, or just B, that this is sort of, at the very least, kind of a clear and obvious first step to get out of that basement situation we were long falling into?
Well, I think again, another great job. And you think in terms of coach of the year, he has to be in that, in that category of being one of those people that might be selected. He has turned his team around, and he's turned it around because he came with a real game plan. The things that we've seen, I shouldn't say it like that. How we've seen this team being coached in the last few years has not been, I wouldn't think it was the type of coaching that I would like to see. And I said it on one of the Knick games interviews earlier this year, is that Thibodeau, he comes in and he's going to be, first of all, a defensive coach, which is something that, we haven't seen that much of, in the last few years. Secondly, he's going to demand that guys be certain types of player, more professional. And he's done pretty much that. I would think that if anything, he's brought back a sense of winning that we haven't had here at long anticipation of winning. You find these guys, they could be out of a game, but you never feel as though they're out of a game. You always feel as though they could come back. And he's got them playing that type of defense where they're hustling, they're looking out for each other, and they always have a chance to come back because they could get the steals, they could hit the big jumper, and so forth and so on. And that's what, for me, that's what makes this all, this really exciting, because I'm not going to just leave the TV at 5 minutes and they're down. I'm going to stay there for that last 5 minutes because I know they got a possibility of coming back.
That's been a huge part of this. Like, I mean, last year working games or watching games, it like felt like a chore or a task, and you could easily walk away. But this year, I'm like glued. I'm glued for every single second. So Tom Thibodeau has had a huge effect, as you said. I mean, we are a much better defensive team. We've improved across the board in so many areas. Guys are buying in. We've taken a huge step. And I know that you said sort of with the Julius comparison to Willis, where you were saying, he just got here, he just started. So what do you think the next step may be? Like, what do you think as you watch this team, what is it that you see that could have them grow to that next level?
Well, I'm kind of old school, I like to see teams that stay together. And I believe that this team, of course, they'll get more pieces and whatnot. Toppin will come on and he'll play better, in the second year. But keeping the core of the team together, that's one of the hardest things to do in this day and age because of, free agency and whatnot. But keeping the core of this team together, I think, is very important. And yes, getting a couple of more pieces might help. But we don't know what this team is really capable of doing, because as the years going on and you haven't had Burks, in the lineup, I mean, you want to see the team when it's fully compact, with everybody playing, everybody healthy, and seeing where they go. Yeah, you're going to get some other, players. You're going to go out, I don't know, get another superstar per se, or some type of player like that. And interestingly enough, after this year, you could do that, because last year you couldn't do that because nobody wanted to come here. But this year you can do that because guys see that this is a team that's it's budding, is getting ready to burst out, and they want to be a part of it. So, I see, yeah, okay, great. Next thing that they need to do, I guess, is, just keep stacking up. But I think that the core of the team has to stay, intact.
I agree. I think that's very important as well. And you say it's because you're an old school guy. So I wonder, back in the day, like, back to those teams, and when you came over and you meshed with Clyde and you came into a team that had good chemistry, what was it that made you guys click? Like, here Tibbs has gotten everybody to buy in. They say that all the time, Big 15, everybody's buying in from top to bottom. So what was it for you guys?
Well, I think, first of all, we were a veteran team. And for veteran teams, the instance of what you're doing is a little bit different than teams that are young teams. We came in, we knew what we had to do. The job, it was a real job for us, but, we enjoyed the job because we enjoyed each other. New York at that time was a place of coming together. In the early 70s, man, it was, it was laissez-faire. It was, people were happy. The team was winning. The atmosphere in New York, it was great. And it's interesting because I was at a banquet maybe about 3 years ago or so, and Mike Messina was there. So it was the Yankees, and they're talking about this and that and so forth. And so Mike Messina said, yes, this is, the Yankees town or whatever. And so when I got up to speak, I had to tell Mike, yeah, the Yankees are good and all that, but this town ain't rocking if the Knicks ain't rocking. And, and you can see what's happening right now with the Knicks doing what they're doing, and how you go out and people are talking Knicks. They're not talking about anything else. And that's the great thing about being in New York, is the fact that, this is what's going to happen if the Knicks are happening.
Yeah, I do think that's important too, because obviously we know about the other New York team at this point in time. But when the Knicks are suddenly the 4th seed, I mean, well, does it really matter? I mean, that's kind of what it's come down to. I mean, everybody's been having a blast. That's the biggest thing about this season. We've been on Knicks Twitter. We've been in these internet streets for a long time, and it's been a sad, miserable, angry place a lot of years. And this year has been just unbridled joy, because it's like one part they're winning, of course, but also the expectations were just, hey, maybe we could sneak into the playoffs, was like the ceiling for expectations. And now they have like a stranglehold on kind of that 4 to 6 range, and they might actually get home court, which is, again, not something a lot of people expected. So joy has been the word around here, especially for guys like me. I was pessimistic for a while. I'm 30 years old. Hasn't been great in my 30 years in Knicks land, but I mean, you can't watch this team play as hard as they do now and not get anything but excited every day when you talk about them. Like, this show has been wildly positive this season, and it's probably thrown off most of our listeners, but it's been enjoyable nonetheless. Like, that's the best way I could describe it.
Well, again, when the Knicks are doing it, everything is happening, and everybody benefits from it. You're benefited from it by people listening into you and talking and want to see what you say, what's going to happen for the next game, or what happened in the past game. It's an exciting time, and like you said, nobody really felt that this was how it was going to be. Certainly, just sneaking into the playoffs was going to be acceptable. Now you get to another expectation, and we don't know, how far they could go. I mean, when you think in terms of where they land in terms of the final playoffs, you don't really, it doesn't really matter per se what teams they play, because whatever team they're going to play, it's going to be hard. They're going to be out there, they're going to play hard, and they could beat any team. See, that's the factor that a lot of people don't realize about this particular team. When they're on, they could beat any team that's out there. And there's no like teams that's really running away. Now, you talk about our crosstown neighbors, the Nets, they're something else, but I hope I wouldn't want to see them anywhere except for in the finals.
Yeah, not definitely. They are scary still. I mean, they've only been at basically 2/3 strength most of the year, interchangeably. They'd have any two of Kyrie and Harden, or KD and Harden, at any given time. They haven't really been fully healthy. I think they've played less than 7 total games in the regular season with all 3 of them so far. So either way, despite that, they've been very good, and you never want to play that much talent, especially in any playoff series. So I agree with you. Like, all I'm trying to do is get to the playoffs, get this home court advantage, beat the crap out of the Celtics, move on to the next round, and then wherever the chips may fall after that, we've done our job this season. We made the playoffs, we advanced. We got those Boston bums out of here, and we could just figure out the rest going into the offseason.
As a kid growing up, my favorite in Philadelphia, my favorite team was the Celtics. So and my first game in the NBA was against the Celtics. So I had a really hard time that first game playing against those guys, and that mystique still lingers with me.
I gotta ask now, since you said it, which player was your favorite from the Celtics? Like, why were they your favorite team growing up?
Well, um, I started playing basketball when I was 14. So, the Celtics were, rolling at the time and whatnot. And so when I started playing, we had a team and we called ourselves the Trotters. And we just patterned ourselves after the Celtics. We get the ball out, hit it up, throw it up, and then there's guys. So in other words, that would be Russell takes the ball out, throws it to Kuzi. Kuzi hooks pass it down to Sharman. Sharman to the free throw line. Jumper, good. That was our game. So, all those guys, influenced how I played the game and how I thought about the game. And fortunately, because we were, young guys that were growing up together, we learned the game. It wasn't about just playing the game. We learned the game. And we learned the game from playing together, and we learned the game from what they call the old heads that were older than us, that taught us what we should do, that pulled us aside and say, hey, Earl, you could have gone this way, or you could have done this when that guy did that. And, so, those formative years, they really set a standard as to where you finally get to in this game of basketball.
And since you're talking about, learning the game, I did a little research. I saw that you were actually interested in soccer and baseball before basketball. So soccer specifically, since soccer is such a team game, you can't have one guy bring the ball up the pitch and score a goal. Did soccer, being involved in soccer early on, did that kind of help develop basketball? Because I feel like basketball at its peak is best when it's, the ball's moving around and defenses can't, gravitate towards one guy. So how did soccer kind of help you, if it did, learn the game of good basketball?
Well, in soccer, it's about teamwork and, getting the ball, the fullback, as we had it here, keeping the ball away from the goalie and getting it up to the half and, the halfback, hitting, kicking the ball up front so the forwards can go and, try and, score, get the ball in the position to take a shot. For me, I'll tell you a little story. But for me, being on the soccer field, I was always in the best shape when I went to the basketball court. So I was running around guys. I didn't have a game, but I was running around guys and whatnot. So at one point in high school, I decided I was going to go out for football. And so I went down to the football field, and the coach, he gave me all the equipment, and they told me to sit up in the stands and watch the practice and so forth and so on. And so I did that, and I saw how hard these guys was hitting and whatnot. The coach found all his equipment in the stands. I was down at the soccer field for the next game. Too much contact for me.
Okay, so you were influenced by the Celtics. You were also influenced by soccer. And I know I went to a basketball camp, and one of the kids there was All-State, and he said that he played soccer also to get his footwork better. So I feel like that may have added to the art form in your game, and just to be someone who others who play the game regard your play style as an art form. Do you feel like, so that's who you were influenced by, but do you see people who are similar to you? Like, do you ever watch anybody, even maybe not current, but over the years, and just see who may have, taken some pages out of your book?
Well, when I look at the game today, it's kind of like the game I played back in the day. It was like, of course, I wasn't dunking. I would get out on a break and dunk, but I wasn't dunking over guys. But my head has been, kind of like in this frame, um, uh, getting the ball out, individual stuff, but winning team stuff. Um, you know, there are guys that I think that, yeah, there are guys that have taken some of the things, but the things that they've taken, they've improved upon it and made it even better, but if I was playing today, I think this would be the kind of game I would be playing anyway. And because when I came out, I had to more or less, I had to tone my game down, so for the most part. And everybody when I first got in, it was, oh, he's a hot dog, he's this, he's that, until they started seeing the fans come in, to see me. So then I went from a hot dog to a genius, in like 6 months. So it's great to see this game and how it's developed and so forth. But a lot of times I look at it and I see myself even in this game.
Yeah, I was gonna say, that's an excellent point because when you look back at your next team specifically, that two guard lineup with like you and Clyde, like that's like every NBA lineup now runs these sort of well-rounded two guard sets. Like, growing up in the 90s, it was like, who your point guard was, and then the two guard was always pretty much just a shooter, more of a catch and shoot guy. Hopefully he has more upside than that, but it was more cut and dry. And I feel like you guys actually played more of a modern game than like when we always talk about bringing back like the 90s Knicks energy, right? I feel like maybe we should be talking more about bringing back the 70s Knicks energy, because that two guard set is kind of like where you want to be in the modern game. Because I do agree. I think your play style would have fit right in with today. That's exactly what you should be going for.
Well, I always thought that, even when we didn't have a good team here in New York and when Clyde and I was there, one of the great, good things is that I always felt that if you had two good guards, you could always stay in the game. You could always, you might not win a game, but you could be in the game and maybe get lucky down the stretch, But, that was one of the reasons, I enjoyed playing with Clyde. I mean, we both, I think was 75 or so. We both made the starting all-star team, two guards on the all-star team starting. So that was a little bit different, even for back in those days. But I think that when you think about this game, I mean, it's all about here. It's a lot of talent out there. Everybody can run, jump, and so forth and so on. But the guys who can think the game through are the guys who are successful in it. And if you've got a lot of talent that never really got to where they should be because they didn't understand the real part of the game. There are guys that have been in the league for a long time that you say, well, how's he in it? Only because he understands what he's supposed to do. See, everybody's not a star in this game, but everybody can fit in the game. Where do you fit? That's the whole idea when you think in terms of guys coming into where do you fit? Where do you fit with this team? Because what you can do might not be what this team needs. So you got to know what it is that you could do in order to stay and maybe move somewhere else later on to a team that you could, do what you can do. So it's all a matter of being able to think the game, understand the game, and know your own talents. I'm preaching now, sorry.
No, I mean, look, that's really the right idea. I mean, it's always better to have, you want guys who are more talented than less. So hopefully that's the dream, because then you can get a couple of these guys and then you figure out what you're good at and how you need to fit. But I actually, more so than just on playing with Clyde, because we know you've gotten to talk a lot about that, playing with Clyde in those glory days. I read somewhere that you're a bit perturbed that people don't remember your Bolts Knicks playoff series. They talk about the Celtics, they talk about the Lakers, they talk about these other things. But you guys had some good series against the Knicks. So I want you to maybe give us a little bit of background on that. I want to let you talk about that and also just lacing them up against Clyde specifically. Like going up, you got the best of both worlds. You got to play directly against them and in the playoffs, and then you got to go team up with them afterward. Like that's pretty good.
Well, I think the thing that has always motivated me was competition. And coming into the league, I mean, Clyde and I have been, we're joined at the hip forever. Even if we didn't want to be, but we're joined at the hip forever. And it started really back in high school when there was a guy who played with me, and he graduated a year or so before I did. He went to Southern Illinois. So bang, that was the first time. Then they sent my pictures of me playing to the coach of Southern Illinois, about me going maybe there. And the guy came back and said, well, I couldn't dribble well enough. so okay. So then we go out and our senior year in college, Clyde wins NIT. I went in that, in the college division championship. So, there's talk and whatnot back and forth there. Then I'm the second person chosen in the draft. Clyde is the fourth or fifth. And so now we're battling as rookies. When he comes in, they're talking Clyde. When I go to New York, they're talking Earl. So we had a thing, and it wasn't so much as what it was us. It was more media stuff, more people talking about what it is that he could do or he couldn't do. And so we always had this thing. We never really talked to each other, never really said a lot to each other. We just did. I know Clyde would be, sticking his hand around me and trying to get the ball. So that got me into putting the ball in front of me if I got by, so that he wouldn't be hitting the ball from behind. So, I learned a lot, even in playing against him, and then of course, the last game that I played in Baltimore was against the Knicks. And after that game, I had requested a trade, and my agent called me and said, Earl, don't play that game. That was against the Knicks. Don't play that game. We're gonna sit out. So I didn't play that game. That was the last game I was supposed to play, and I sat out, and I forced them to trade me. And it just so happened they're going to trade me. We got to be traded to the New York Knicks, and I had to think about it because I had a lot of fun playing against Clyde. And I'm quite sure he had fun playing against me. I mean, it was a competitive thing. You two young guys going after each other. But at the end of the day, I said, well, hey, I could, I'm a basketball player. I can play, regardless of whatever it might be. And okay, I'll go. And that's how I got to New York. So that's how we've been all this time, right at the hip of each other.
So just building off that, because it's funny you did mention your trade to the Knicks, and I was watching When the Garden Was Eden a couple of weeks back, and I remember you talking about you going up to New York and you were saying, I don't know if I can do this. Was it more of just the competitive nature in you to go against Clyde and go against the Knicks? Or was it more of just, I liked being the top dog? What was it? Because everything you described in terms of what you think good basketball is, that's what the Knicks were, and you appreciated it. So what was that minor apprehension? Because it looked like it went away once Dave DeBusschere went up to you. So if you could just talk a little more about that.
Well, first of all, as a player, you come into the league and you have aspirations of your own. This is what I want to do. This is what I want to accomplish, and so forth and so on. My thing was I was coming into the league. I was going to play 10 years. I was going to score 20,000 points and so forth and so on. We will win championships, whatever the case may be. So when I went to went to New York, I had to think about it because, all those things that I had felt, for myself that I wanted to do, I knew that was going to be squashed. I wasn't going to be able to score that 20,000 points. I wasn't going to be able to do all the things that I wanted to do. And I had to think about it. Am I able to give that up in order to continue playing basketball? And so after talking with a friend of mine, decided that I could do that. I can play basketball. I can do that. I'll just have to adjust because I can play basketball. And I didn't just say I could play basketball. I said, I'm from Philly. I could play basketball. So, that was my trip, coming into New York. And of course, when I got here, my first drive, just driving in, I looked over and I saw this car with a police car, and I saw these two legs up in the police car in the back, and the policeman, and I say, wow, this is 11 o'clock at night. I said, well, this looks like my kind of town.
Okay, so you're from Philly, you played in New York, you played in Baltimore, you got to experience the Garden as an opponent and as a player. You got to experience winning in New York, as we see with the Knicks being pretty good now. How, like you said, it's the talk of the town, it's the talk of the city. Over the years, especially recently with the Knicks being bad, people have been saying things like, questioning what the mecca of basketball is. And so just as somebody, who's known basketball from way back through multiple cities, how do you feel about that discussion?
Well, we've, it goes back to that same thing in competition again. It's always been the Philadelphia, New York games when I was coming up, and they might still even be playing them. It was always that question of who's best and so forth and so on. We had Wilt, they had Kareem, so forth and so on. But, I just think that I'm going to try and be non-committal. Yeah, New York, it's got a lot of ball players. I mean, you can think back from back in the days, and all the way up to now in terms of guys who play basketball here in New York. And because New York is so big, you all these different boroughs and whatnot, and guys coming from different boroughs. You got a lot of guys who played here. We used to always say that in New York, guys were always, they were dunkers. They were drivers and dunkers. And in Philly, we were thinkers and jump shooters, and that was kind of like the difference between the two, because of the fact that when we did come up to play, it was always a battle. We had the different, the high school, we had the unlimited, we had the pros, so forth and so on. So you had the different divisions that played when we came up or when they came down to Philly. The one time that I can remember, the last time I came up here, we played against Kareem. And we had to change our names back in those days because, college guys and whatnot, they couldn't play outside ball. So in the summer times, you had to, if you were on the books, they had to have your name or something else, and we had a heck of a game up here, and something that people still talk about. And you gain reputation. I mean, you played against guys that were great players, were great playground players, guys who never really played pro ball, but they were great playground players, Helicopter and all those guys. I mean, it was a fantastic time. And it was fantastic because of the fact that you could go out and you could play in the playgrounds. You can't do that today. People don't, people get hurt, so there's a limited amount of you got your AAU teams, you got all these different teams, but you can't play a lot of pickup stuff in the playgrounds today because I think they're getting ready to redo Rucker Park because it's been in shambles the last few years. So somebody's getting ready to redo that. So it's going to be, for me, I'm a Philly guy, but I'm a New Yorker. And when there was a song, I remember it back in the 70s, there was a song and I was talking to someone about it, and it was a song called Native New Yorker. And I felt that was me, even though I was from Philly, because I have given whatever I had right up here in New York. And I always felt as though I would have that presence and that feeling of being a New Yorker, even if I went somewhere else. So, who's the best? It's the New Yorker is the best, is the Mecca A, and Philly is the Mecca A1.
Fair enough. Let me add a different twist to it, because you did mention Rucker Park. So I got to ask, I know you were very popular on the street ball circuit coming up. Where was, like, if someone's saying, where's the best place to get a pickup game when you were coming up, which court would you go to? Philly, New York, Baltimore, whatever city?
Well, I would only know Philly because I never played in Rucker. I visited, I've seen guys play up there, but I never played in Rucker. So, but I have a friend, Ernie Brown, who went to school with me. He knew everybody, all the Rucker players. We used to play against the guys from Texas Western, the guys who were here, Neville Shedd and all those guys, when they came to Philly to play and whatnot. So, it was just a great thing back in those days. I don't want to harp on being so far back in history and whatnot, because we're talking about the Knicks here. But it was a great time to be a basketball player coming up, whether you're in Philly or New York, because of the competitions and because you had Hall of Famers that weren't afraid to be out there on the hard court playing against you. I can remember just sitting on the sideline, while these guys are playing, and as a kid, and hoping that somebody will come down and say, "Hey, you want to be a fifth? Hey, you want to be a fifth man?" That was the ultimate. You won't have that. You don't have that anymore.
Now, like you said, we don't want to, go too much back in history. So I want to steer us back now to the modern age, the modern Knicks. We know that they're going to be in the playoffs to some way, shape, or form. It's not a 100% certainty, but it would take a damn near historic collapse these last 8 to 9 games for them to fall out of the race. And even then, it would probably be play-ins, which whatever. But on that note, they're going to be in. Real quick, is there a team that you would prefer playing based on what you've seen this season? And is there a team that you would prefer avoiding? We know the Nets. We know that. But for maybe the first round teams, because for example, me, I don't want to play the Heat. I want no parts of Eric Spoelstra. I want no parts of his wizardry in the postseason. He seems to always get the most out of his guys the same way, in a similar fashion that Tibbs does. I just don't want to deal with that. I don't. I'd rather go play the Celtics. They have a fraudulent head coach, in my opinion, in Brad Stevens. They got Brad Einstein over there. Everybody thought was the best coach in the NBA as soon as he got the job. I would like to play them, the Hawks even, but I would want to avoid the Heat. What about you?
I would say a team that I would rather not play is probably the Hawks. The Hawks, they've got, just something about them that they come up big. And I think that, even with Trey doing what he does, the forwards, they haven't even played Gallinari and whatnot, at all. I mean, he might play, but the teams that have more of an outside threat, those are the teams I don't want to play. And that team there, they're a scrappy team. They got Capella, and he doesn't have to score. He's defense and so forth. Just plug it up. Yeah, I would think that was a team that I wouldn't want to play.
I mean, it makes a lot of sense. Normally, we want to avoid the high upside shooting potential guys in the playoffs because those are the guys that go off for 41 game and just torch you, and then that is what it is. It's you could play good defense sometimes, and Trey shooting from 35 feet away, and there's nothing you could do about it.
Yeah, well, and it's a little bit different from when you have like let's say you play in Milwaukee or something like that, and there's a line. Most teams play a line, whereas Anatombo, he comes down and he wants to do stuff. But if you play in a line, he can't do that. Make him shoot more outside shots. Sure, he's going to get his or whatnot, maybe up underneath, but not in the way or not meaningful enough that it's going to destroy what you're doing, as a team.
Speaking of the playoffs, so I mean, as we all know, the playoffs are a different beast from the regular season. I mean, as we all know, but much better than we do. Like as somebody who's experienced that, been battle tested, won a championship, there was one year where Chauncey Billups was here and, for like 5 minutes, but we went into the playoffs and he was like, one thing that he told Tony Douglas was that every quarter is a game. Like the game is 4 games. You got to win every quarter individually. Mm-hmm. So as a champion with this team going into the playoffs and a lot of these guys doing it for the first time in their careers outside of like Rose and Taj Gibson, what would you have any advice for them going into the playoffs as far as like mindset or just any little nuggets?
Well, I've always thought that, the only thing that is really different in the playoffs is the defense, as far as I was concerned. And the defense only because I think the refs allow you to be a little more physical. And so if I was to give someone any kind of advice, I would just say, you got to take these games one game at a time and don't think about, you're in the playoffs. You just, because you have, what you did to get here is significant enough in order for you to win. So you have to be able to, try and duplicate what you've been doing to get here in order to get out of here.
Yeah, one thing that I like about this Knicks team, and I've said it on this pod a couple different times, but they've seemingly played like playoff basketball most of the season is the way that I like to describe it, because it's been a weird season and you can't replicate the playoffs, of course, because it's going to be different, especially for guys like Julius. They're going to be sending all kinds of traps and pressure at him once the actual game starts. He sees them now a little bit, but it's a little bit of a lesser degree. You know how it goes in the playoffs when they're only scheming against you for 4 to 7 straight games. But I guess, where do you stand on how well does this bode for them in an actual series once they get there? Because they've really not been playing in any blowouts this year. It's been very tight games. Yeah,
well, that's a good thing, because you play enough tight games, you start to understand how to win. And as we've been talking about, this is a team that's learning to win, and this is a team that's together. They could win. I think the main thing in a nutshell, as you approach the playoffs, is to, first of all, you want to be as healthy as possible. So you're going to probably, if you got a big enough lead, you could, take off some nights or, at least play less, and so that you could be ready and for the playoffs when they start. But I think that if it's all about understanding what you have. I mean, these guys, you understand that how you've won these games and whatnot. And this is a different culture. Right now, this is not the same team that you've always had. This is a different team. This is a different team from the beginning of the season. And so now these guys are learning. It's a different culture of learning what you can do and how you can do it. And if you've been playing a lot of close games, you've already got a blueprint of how to make it happen for yourself. And I just think that that's important. I can only revert back to myself and when we played, but even as a Baltimore Bullet, we went from last place to first place in a season, and that was about. Once we started playing close games, get the last tip in, or getting somebody hitting the jumper in the last second or so, and that presented a confidence base that we could win, and it didn't matter who took it because we relied on everybody. So you get that confidence built up. And you start to get comfortable in that and know that you can, no matter what that score is, you got a shot to come back. That's a heck of a feeling.
Yeah, I was gonna say on the confidence note, me and Sean, Mike, we were talking about this on the last pod, but I feel like at least with the defense and the confidence, those are the two big things that they've gone for them. The offense we know has been up and down. The last 15 games, they ranked like third somehow because the 3-point shooting it's just been a barrage lately. I've read in 2021, every month so far, they've gotten better at 3-point shooting with their open shots, which is obviously what you want. It's the whole point. But there's no more confident player in the NBA right now than Julius Randle. Like, I truly believe that when you watch him shoot some of these shots that he's taking, he doesn't care if you're 5 feet away from him or you're 5 inches away from him. He's shooting the ball. He's shooting it in your face. He's going to make the jump shot. And I feel like, he's going to feel some different pressure in the playoffs, but that's what you want. You want to have a guy who's playing this well and playing this confident, on top of the defense and the team and everything else. Like that's a guy that you need. He's got to be on. And it's hard not to be when you're playing with that level of confidence.
Yeah, well, the good thing about that is the fact that he's shooting and he's on. But the fact of the matter is that he could also see. He's big enough, that he could see guys. So he's always looking at other guys, and other guys are getting post up jumpers, and it's kind of like, oh shucks, I got another open shot, and they're knocking them down, and so that loosens up everything on you as the game goes on, because they know that if they double team you, you got guys who actually can knock it down, and that's one of the tricks about being a guard is that if you're doing stuff and you're making good plays and you shoot it off to a guy and you're not making that shot, the next time you're going to shoot it yourself.
It's right though. It's right, and it's a good point, because I feel like sometimes people wonder why players will look off an open shooter or look off somebody like that, and I feel like those are the kinds of things that they gotta figure out and ask themselves, like, did this player do something to kind of lose that trust? Did he miss 4 or 5 in a row? Did he take a bad shot? Did he not shoot when he was supposed to shoot and try to drive to the basket into a double team or into the help? Little things like that are going to always make, when Randall's handling the ball so much, like that kind of stuff is going to show up, even with how much he trusts guys. Like Reggie, he's always hitting Reggie. Reggie always knows where to be, and he always knows where to hit Reggie. Like, right. It's a beautiful connection. RJ, we've seen him build that up over the last year. Last year, they didn't really have it. This year, RJ's hitting his shots, and guess what? Randall is feeding him every all the looks he can get at this point. So, I mean, it really is an excellent point, because they need to have that if they're going to have any kind of success,
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, I think the Knicks are hitting their peak at the perfect time. Last 15 games, second ranked offense and third ranked defense are flip flop. It's amazing times. I can't wait for the playoffs. Earl, if you can come back on for the playoffs, we'd love to have you. But this was fantastic. Everybody, make sure you go follow this icon at Real Earl Monroe on Twitter. Welcome him to the Twitter family, and we can talk more about playoffs as that time comes. But unless you have anything else to plug, Sean, you got anything to plug?
You guys subscribe to YouTube for Post Game Prosperity. I'm saying Post Game Prosperity only because no pouting, because no losses.
None.
So we're starting. The new win streak has started. The energy is going to go up with every win. It's going to continue to. Thank you so much, Pearl. We appreciate you. Keep tweeting with us.
Absolutely. I appreciate you guys, man. And just keep on doing what you're doing, man. I enjoyed this. It's hard to, when you talk basketball to folks, a lot of times you don't like talking basketball because folks don't know what you're talking about. So it's great to talk some basketball, man.
No, this was great.
No, definitely appreciate you hopping on, making the time for us, man. Bucket list thing for us, of course. But yeah, just happy to talk basketball with the legend anytime we can.
Appreciate it.
Oh yeah, look at this.
Look at that. Hey.
Magazine on my desk.
Perfect.
Well,
Oh man.
All right, my friend.
Okay.
So
We'll
much here.
take it
care,
easy, bro.
All the best.
Take care.
Okay.
Until next time, guys.
Bye-bye.